You've seen different expressions of the church.
Yeah.
House church and traditional church.
Yeah, small church, big mega church. I've been in, yeah.
What are some of your takeaways now? You know, you removed a few years from all of it. What are some of the beauties, the takeaways that you have? What are some of the ugly as you reflect?
Some people think that the answer to that is a multi-ethnic, or should I say a multicultural church. I see the theory of it, the hope of it, and theory of the sort of snares that I've often seen is that it doesn't really end up being multicultural. It's multi-ethnic, but really there is a culture that rises to the top, and the other ones sort of have to play second fiddle to that. It's how I was raised. Like I am culturally a Black Christian. Like if you make Black church references, I'm gonna get it. Like that's who I am, you know? And so it still has, you know, a tender spot in my heart. There's still a loose figure of Jesus that looms in the background.
Welcome to the Legacy Disciple podcast, where we hope to normalize disciple making. I'm here with Joseph Solomon, sipping on his coffee right now.
Turn the logo away.
So Joe, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, man.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
So we have a bit of history together, but I always typically just ask people share your faith journey. And so obviously we're going to get to where you've been the last few years, but you grew up in a Christian household, you grew up going to church. Can you kind of take us on that journey a little bit?
Yeah. And I want to be careful how as I was thinking about answering this, I think my knee-jerk reaction has been to try to describe that journey in Christian language, or in language that legitimizes my faith journey to people who are still believers. And so if I pause in certain areas or whatever, that's kind of what I'm thinking through, because I don't want to have that that knee-jerk reaction anymore. But yeah, it all started for me in the home. My parents are believers, Christians. Grew up in church in Texas, small town Texas, military base. So it was though it was a small town, it wasn't small town people. Everybody was from kind of everywhere. And my early sort of experience with faith obviously started in the home, but then really children's church, if I go back as early as where it actually started. I think of people like...
You ever sing Father Abraham?
Yeah, Father Abraham had many sons. I remember the room I'm singing in right now, yeah.
That's a classic, right?
Yeah. Sons had Father Abraham, and I ain't one, so let's just praise the Lord, right? Yeah. Sister Tedder, Sister Triggs, all these teachers, that Brother Mumfield. I'm thinking of all these people. People don't do that anymore. Growing up, everybody called each other brother and sister something. I don't think that's a thing anymore. But that was my early experience, and I think as far as it was very Pentecostal. You know, we were technically non-denominational, but very Pentecostal in the doctrine. We're very fivefold ministry, very charismatic, prophecy, tongues, dreams, casting out of demons, all that stuff was part of my very dynamic experience as a Christian. I would even say, and I don't mean this in a negative way, I would even say a more, compared to how I started seeing Christianity, it was much more mystical, this very existential, personal, dynamic relationship with God that wasn't just couched in doctrine and stuff. And so that's kind of where it started for me. And my pastor, Bishop Nathaniel Holcomb, as far as early heavy influences on me of what I thought about God and what I thought about the Bible, was absolutely him. And I would say my father, but a lot of what my father was teaching me was what was taught by him as well. He was a father figure to my dad. My dad was raised as a foster child, so he didn't really have a tight relationship with his father. And so when he met my pastor, he became sort of role model for what it looked like to be a man, to be a father, to be a husband. And so Nathaniel Holcomb was, to this day, man, I've listened to a lot of speakers, a lot of preachers, and I still rank him like top 5, just like orators. You know, as I've been able to travel around, like, you don't really know what you got until you leave, and you're like, oh wow, like he really was someone who studied the Bible so much, and the way he spoke, like it was so organized, but he didn't really need an outline. Like the outline was just like in his heart, in his body. Like he can just float around the room and not miss a beat. And so yeah, Bishop Nathaniel Holcomb was probably like an early influence for me when it comes to like being discipled, you know. And then fast forward, I get to college, and that journey, that's my first time having like a real like crisis of faith. You know, I never really had my faith challenged in an intellectual way before. Again, grew up in a very charismatic, sort of mystical church, and the need for there to be some sort of rational, intellectual defense of God or the Bible wasn't really like a necessary thing. So that was my first time kind of really having a crisis of faith, and really didn't consider myself Christian for probably a few years in college. Probably called myself agnostic. I was afraid to call myself a full-on atheist, but I was definitely agnostic at best. And yeah, I don't know if we want to pause there and continue, but that's kind of like, that's where the first sort of like moment of crisis happens. And that's really important because it really set up the next phase for me. And when I did want to return back to Christianity, I wanted this deep relationship with God, but I also knew I wanted this intellectual, rational kind of approach to it as well. I wanted to know why I believed what I believed. Yeah. Enter apologetics. My first apologetics book that I read was Why I Am a Christian by Norman Geisler. Haven't heard that name in a minute. And very classical evidential apologetics. And that was nice. It was nice to sort of satisfy that like urge to want to have some sort of intellectual grounding for what I believed. And that would set up my attraction to the sort of next big part of my Christian experience, which was the Reformed Calvinist kind of space that was just very high orthodoxy, very high theology, lofty theology. And I'm really blurring through things. I'm trying to keep this as concise as possible because that was such a big moment. I really got into that shortly before, probably a few years before I met you, before I moved to Chicago. I was living in Houston, Texas, and I stumbled across a Matt Chandler sermon, and that was my first time ever hearing expository preaching. So my mind was blown by this type of preaching, and I wanted to find more of that. And so I started like searching like reformed charismatic, and just trying to figure out like, what is this whole world? Mind you, most of the people I was stumbling into were very white, very male. And the next figure that I stumbled across became, man, such a planet, like just that had so much gravity in my life. And he was giving this short talk. It was on YouTube. It was a talk about Christian apologetics. He said this quote from Charles Spurgeon: "Why would I defend a lion? You don't defend a lion. You know, let it defend itself." And he was comparing the lion to the Word of God, and just tall, burly, bearded man. Although he didn't have a beard at the time, man, black dude. I had not heard of black dudes in this space before, and was just convincing, man. And he was preaching at a church not far from my home in Houston, Texas, Vodi Bakum.
I just want to highlight that it's not like you were on the outskirts of the church you grew up in, right? Your father was I think he was a deacon, right, of the church, elder of the church. I mean, you were in it. And then now you're talking about kind of the next phase of your Christian journey in a different kind of space. But again, you were in it. You were listening to the podcast, or you were reading the books, you were listening to the sermons and so forth. You spent time with these people. So now you kind of move from the charismatic space, highly emotional. You move to the other extreme, as far extreme as you could go, in the highly intellectual, kind of reformed space. And you're there. You start a YouTube channel. Chase God TV.
Yeah, the early videos of it's interesting. The early parts of Chase God TV, like 80 to 90% of what I was teaching on there was a huge mix. The reason why I bring those two characters up was almost a perfect blend at first of Bishop Nathaniel Holcomb's teachings and Vodi Bakum, and then eventually it started swaying more to like the style of Vodi Bakum. But yeah, they were huge influences in me starting that channel. Yeah.
And then, so I remember I was in Houston for some conference, and Flame had a concert.
Oh, wow, yeah. Oh, bro, I just saw a picture. I'm going to show it to you. A picture at that specific concert. I looked at it this morning. With Reconcile was there, right?
He might have been.
Yeah, right. It was like, yeah. I just literally saw a photo of that this morning.
So I just I live in Chicago.
I totally forgot
obviously.
that we met that night.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
So we met in the green room
Yep.
at this concert.
Yeah.
And we sparked up a conversation.
Yeah. Did you even know like what I was doing at the time?
No, I
I
didn't
think
know
I
who
was
you were.
like, yeah. I was still very much like in Houston. I was like becoming known, but like as far as like more than that, it was still very early.
Yeah, I had no idea who you were.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I think we're the only two in the green room at least at one point.
Wow.
We started talking through life, exchanged numbers, and I remember we ended up having some phone calls. I remember you were in another relationship with somebody, and you were, I think she was interested in missions, and you were like, you didn't feel called to missions.
Oh, please don't bring that up. Oh my God.
And
skip past that.
But anyhow, I remember sitting on my front
It's
porch.
not that I was not interested in missions. I was not interested in dying on a mission field. That's a very specific detail.
That might have been. But yeah, I remember as clear as day sitting on my front porch having a conversation with you about that relationship. And then somewhere along the line, I was working for a Christian nonprofit in Chicago, and I think we were looking to fill a position, and I had called you asking you about that. And so you moved to Chicago what year?
2015.
2015, 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You moved in with Heidi and I while you were working alongside of me as well at this ministry.
Yeah.
So obviously we got to know each other well during this time. I think you lived with us from 2015 till 2019.
So it was just under 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember I think it was the first night you moved in. There was a shooting across the street.
No, it wasn't the first night. It was about 6 weeks in, actually. It was
6 weeks in.
Yeah. When I first moved there, it was still snow outside, so people wasn't really active. It didn't get active until, as soon as it got above 60 degrees, that's when everyone started coming outside. And the first few weeks I was there, I was like, I don't know why everybody's saying Chicago's all that like bad. It's not that bad. It's pretty quiet around here. And I didn't realize it was the snow that was keeping everything quiet. And it was just me and Heidi at the house, actually. And I had heard shootings around the neighborhood prior to that. I was like, oh, that's pretty distant though. I started learning, how to gauge how far a gunshot was.
And the difference between a gunshot and fireworks.
And a firework, yeah, I couldn't tell the difference at first. And now I definitely know the difference. And I remember this time it was like, oh, I heard that gunshot. It was pretty loud, and I heard somebody say, "Help, help!" And then I look out the window, and there's a car like slowly creeping by, and then there's some guys standing across the street. I don't think it was a trap house anymore. That got shut down like shortly after that for some reason.
Yeah,
but it was it was two trap houses on the street at the time.
Yep. One
on the corner and one directly across from y'all. And so some dudes that were coming outside of that house just looking around, and then the dude gets out of the car and pulls out a gun, and I'm watching this unfold. I'm like, I think I'm about to watch somebody get killed, fam. And I saw the first like 2 gunshots go off, and then I like closed the blinds. I was like, I don't even want to be a witness.
And I don't think anyone got hit then.
Which is crazy because they were not very far. Yeah. Like, I remember saying, like, yo, Heidi, they shooting. And because they were, the dude couldn't have been any more than 20 feet away from the people that he was shooting at. So I was like, oh, someone definitely got hit. So I was actually really surprised that someone didn't get hit because of how close it was. But that wouldn't be my first experience with events like that in Chicago. But yeah, it was pretty early on.
Yeah. So we kind of started to build this relationship, discipleship relationship. Yeah. We would often drive to work together. We would have conversations. Obviously, you're at the house all the time. We would sit around, have conversations about theology, about life, so forth. And there was a season when I was going to the gym with you. I think that lasted about 3 months.
Could you call it a season?
It was like 3 months, right?
Yeah. I'll let you tell it.
Okay. We'll go with my version. 2-3 months, something like that.
Hey, who's counting at this point, man?
So we literally spent a lot of time working together, living in the house together, so forth. From your perspective, looking back, like how would you already talked about kind of the church you grew up in. You talked about, and then, obviously we were doing house church as well. It's probably include that. So it was a very intimate community, Christian community. Yeah. Just looking back 10 years ago, what did our relationship look like to you? What are maybe some good parts of that? Is there anything that you wish I had done different? What stuck out? Like, what was the impact of that relationship?
Yeah. One, I didn't plan on living there for the entire time that I was in Chicago. There was several intervals where you were adamant about me staying there. My plan was, I've been living on my own for, I was fine living on my own, and I had no intention of living with people after that. And it was supposed to be just transitional. I had a plan to be there for like a month, maybe 2 months, just like max, and just kind of look for some places. And you were really adamant about me staying there, and then gave it about another year, and then I was like, all right, now I'm absolutely moving. Especially when I didn't have a roommate. I was the only person living there who didn't have a roommate, which I thought was right, and then put this guy in there with me.
That's right.
Yeah. The guy who brought the girl in. Remember that?
I think he only lasts like a week or something, right?
Nah, it was a couple months, man.
Couple months?
Yeah, man. I'm not gonna get into that. It was weird, man. I hadn't had a roommate since college, so that was just weird.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So, just so people have an idea of the setup of our house, there were 4 guest rooms on our second floor. Each of them typically had 2 people staying there. Yeah. We don't do that many people with us now. We're older and so forth. But at the time you were staying with us, I think it was Parrish.
Yeah. Man, there was so many people, man. Parrish, what was the guy with the glasses, man? White guy.
Oh, Clint?
Clint
with us?
Clint
at the
was
time.
there. Yeah, Clint was there, man.
That was probably the most lively.
Man.
Lively, I use that word as,
Chicago is like, for me, was like the definition of do it for the plot. Like that was, it was a plot, man. There was so many. If we have time, I'll bring up highlights of stories there. But yeah, it was very lively. Parrish, Clint, Kevin Perry, Preston's cousin,
Kevin was
staying there at the time. Emmanuel Manny was there as well. And that was the main ones. I think Jeff came in at some point later, but yeah, that was my era, my class.
Yeah. I think I feel like you broke up a fight at one time.
Yeah, I wasn't even living there at the time. I actually was just visiting. I had moved. I was living in Atlanta, and I came to visit you, and I stayed at your house. And Kareem was staying there now, and then him and Parrish got into it. Man, I think Kareem was not to put his business out there, but he wasn't in his right mind at the time. My first time interacting with Kareem was actually he wasn't in his right mind. He came into he wasn't even living there. I had only heard stories about Kareem, and he shows up in the house at 3:30 in the morning, blasting music. Thumping music downstairs, music turned full volume. And I'm like, yo, is there music playing outside? I just knew somebody was playing in the car outside. I come downstairs, Kareem's blasting music. And he's rocking, bro, back side to side, just like, I smell biscuits. He made biscuits. There was like a big salad bowl full of cereal that he had made, like half a gallon of milk in that joint. And he made a tray of biscuits and only ate one of them. And I said, bro, can you turn the music? I had no idea who this dude was, so I didn't want to get close to him. I was like, I don't know who. I was like, okay, you turn the music down? I was like, huh? Can you turn the music down, bro? Huh? Turn the music down, bro. Oh, okay. I go back upstairs. Music goes right back up. And I was like, Brian, somebody's downstairs. I don't know who he is. And by the time you get down there, he had stole your shoes and was gone. So that was my first interaction with Kareem.
Yeah.
But to get back to what you were saying, like experience there, like I was saying, I wasn't planning to stay there long, so it turning into this like intimate discipleship thing, man, many mornings I was up with you. We were doing pastor meetings, 2 or 3 meetings before we even went to work at 9:30, and just long days, man. You were, hopefully you've slowed down a bit, man. That hustle spirit, I can see the virtue in it, but I hope you also realize that wasn't sustainable to be getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going full speed until 10 p.m. every day.
I don't get up at 5 anymore, but.
What, 6?
6:30.
Oh, okay.
6, 7.
All right. Okay, get a little loose. All right. Yeah, so, yeah, man. So we that was my first type of relationship like that. I had always been, well, I won't say always, but the church that I was in before, I was pretty close to my pastor, but not in this way. I think it's always funny that now that I'm like not a Christian, people always say they always try to pinpoint like where I went wrong, and one of the things they pinpoint is like, see, there's no discipleship. They had nobody leading them. I was like, y'all don't understand. Like, I don't know. Yeah. There's not many people who like walk alongside the pastor the way that I did.
Yeah. Again, I wanna highlight you were deep in it.
Yeah.
Like, from childhood, you know. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's what I've always appreciated about you is you've always been someone who searches for truth. Mm-hmm. Someone who asks the questions, where many people just kind of go with the flow. This is the way I was raised. This must be true, so forth. Yeah. And you've never settled for that. And that's not just in faith, but just in life. I mean, you have become a good musician because you started asking questions. You learned how to do your own videos because you would start asking questions, and that led you to this search.
Yes, very observant, thank you. But I will say that's really interesting because of our relationship that, like I said, prior to you, intellectual approach to faith was like a very important thing, and that wasn't your thing. And not as like a shade, like you weren't, compared to a Voti, like you just weren't that concerned with eschatology and all the other like minutia to some. I mean, obviously not that you didn't care about doctrine or theology. Obviously you did. Obviously you studied a lot, but just not as far as like the minutia of covenantal apologetics versus whatever. Like the way that you discipled, the way that you mentored. Whether I had critiques or disagreements about it later on, one thing I can always say is that you were a doer more than a reflector. I've been reading this book. One of my favorite authors as of recent is a old dead a Christian guy, Soren Kierkegaard. This book, The Present Age, The Death of Rebellion, and the whole book is just about how we're in an age of reflection where we would rather just reflect about what we should do rather than doing the thing that we know we should do. And theology can help you do that. It can help you reflect a lot and just reflect and pontificate and write articles and stuff and just continue to do that. And we see that even now in our own political landscape, where if a revolution was ever needed, it's like, will we just reflect? Will we just like write think pieces about what we should do? Which I think that's what a lot of our politicians are doing right now in a constitutional crisis. But just reflecting, you know what I'm saying? I think that one thing about you is that it was more so, you didn't really, you've been very choice with words. And you, especially starting off a relationship with you was always very quiet. I didn't really know what you were thinking. And I would talk and you would just listen, and I'd expect an interruption. You'd just be like, okay. And I'm like, what is, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. And one good thing I can definitely say, not that I have a lot of bad things to say, so I'm not hinting at that, but I'm saying good thing I can say is the conviction that you had on my life was not necessarily with what words that you shared, but like what you were doing. You can argue with people's ideas, you can argue people's theology and their politics and stuff, but if they're doing something and you're not, then you really can't argue with what they're doing. It's like, well, if you have a difference of opinion, do something. Take action and like actually make a change that you want to see. And that has always kind of been your approach, whether it came from, mentorship or church planning, even in politics when we were, Legacy Church was pretty influential in, passing the Laquan McDonald law, and I think that's a great. I could just pause to say that I think it's that glimpse that I had. That is a great testimony of what Christians could be, of like not downplaying the plight of Black community and underserved, resource communities, like actually trying to do something about what the right always complains about, but then also at the same time not disregarding that there are also external factors, political and governmental factors that are making these things come to pass. And so it's not a either or the way that the media would like us to think, but it is both. And I think that you earn the right to critique both sides when you're actually doing something about what everybody likes to use Chicago as. Chicago is like always like the political punt, these days. And so, yeah, just really active, just really about mentoring people, really about like, okay, this is what it takes to mentor this dude. I'm gonna get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I mean, man, almost it's actionable to a fault, man, because I would have gave up on some people quite a long time ago, man. I mean, you were getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take a guy to a job that he didn't want to work so that he can earn enough money to pay you rent to stay at his house, to stay at your house, but you weren't even using that money to pay yourself the rent. You were using it so that you can save up so he can buy himself a car, so you wouldn't have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and take him to get to go to his job. And even then, the ungratefulness that was shown there, like still pursuing and again, to a fault almost. So yeah, that was really impactful to me, man, to just to see, I think, just seeing a leader that was not, because these days, especially with social media, it's so easy just to be a leader that is strong with words. I think there are probably more people like you out in the world. I'm sure there are, but the ones who make the most visibility are the ones who are just wax eloquent and have, know how to work media and stuff. So
yeah, we're all unique, right? God has shaped us all unique, and there are some that are more intellectual, and obviously theology is important to me, and I think you would agree with that. But at the end of the day, theology is only as important as it applies to our lives, how we care for the marginalized, how we love our families, how we. I
would say all knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I'm running into that same issue now, even like not being concerned with theology. It's still like you can pontificate and think and reflect about a whole bunch. I saw this video. It's really like memeable and funny and silly, but like it's so much like truth wrapped up in that. This girl's complaining about people who debate about the shape of the earth. She was like, why would I give a fuck about what shape the fucking earth is? Like, I'm still gonna have to stay here and pay these bills. Like, it doesn't, and it's like, that's so funny, but it's like, yeah, Joe, like all that like not to say, I think there's reflection is good. I don't think that's what Kierkegaard is saying. I get the point you're saying, but I think that if I don't think reflection for reflection's sake is useful to humanity.
And even when you talk about the different church experiences you had, church expressions you've had, right? We tend to go to the extreme as humans, right? So charismatics stay in their charismatic circle. Reform stay in their reform circles. The left stays in their circle. The right stays in their circle, right? And we don't interact with the other. The Christians don't interact with the world.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the polarization, and especially today's algorithms of social media, with the news channels, right? That people watch. It's continuing. It seems to be more and more heading in that direction where we stay in our own world and we polarize, and that's where
we curate our own circles like to a T.
Yeah, and for me, I think there's beauty in both. I mean, I think there's politically, I think there's some good in the right. There's some good in the left. There's some bad in the right. There's some bad in the left. Charismatic Reformed, I think there's some good and bad in both. And what does it look like for people who say, hey, let's sit down, let's connect with people who think differently than we do, have healthy conversations, and hopefully come to a ground that's more nuanced than we would like to believe it is. Yeah. So let's go back to, again, grew up in the black church, a black Pentecostal church. You went to more of a white reform space. I was like...
Yeah,
I just said more of because, obviously Vody was influential in that
but
space.
But he was like, in no disrespect to Vody, he was...
Culturally, yes.
White. That was white evangelical space. Yeah. He went to his church, like, it was white. And
then you went to a more multicultural kind of reformed leaning, with the house churches, Legacy and Cornerstone in Atlanta, which probably pretty
Reformed
similar.
adjacent, Calvinist adjacent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, you've seen different expressions of the church.
Yeah.
House church and traditional church, even, right?
Yeah. Small church, big mega church.
Yeah. What are some of your takeaways now? You removed a few years from all of it. What are some of the if there are the beauties, the takeaways that you have from either the whole picture or bits and pieces of it, right? And then what are some of the ugly, right? As you reflect.
Yeah. One, I'll start with the black church, and I probably won't share a lot of, or if any, critiques about the black church because I don't know if this is the space that I want to do that. But I'm not really in this world a lot, so I don't really know a lot about. I see usually the negative news travels faster than good news, and I see this popular pastor in Atlanta, saying that this is not a black church, and I get what he's trying to. I don't have much context for it, and I honestly don't care enough to go and try to figure out the context, but I get what he's probably trying to say. I've heard that argument a lot of times. People are like, "Oh, it's not about black church, white church." But clearly, at some point in America, a black church was needed. No matter where you are, you can say at some point a black church was needed. So to suggest that we shouldn't have a black church now suggests that we've somehow graduated past needing spaces for black people to relate to God, to relate to Jesus in a very unique way. And I think that even as someone who's left the church, I made a video about this where I'm kind of saddened by the erasure of the Black American Christian culture. It's being really homogenized now. There's not a lot of true black churches out there like there used to be. More and more you have people like someone like a Philip Mitchell who would say this is not a black church, it's a multicultural. Even if this led by black people, started by black people, culturally that's not what we're trying to present to people. And it kind of saddens me because you lose so many cultural artifacts that come with that. I think about even raising my son, like so much of my experience of understanding what it meant to be a black person in America came through the church. Like I grew up military based, so my schools were all extremely multi-ethnic. There wasn't really a dominant ethnicity where I went. It's black, white, Mexican, Asian, everybody. My truly black space was the church. And the church mothers, the shouting, the gospel music, all that cultural expression. And it also, it saddens me that a lot of that is going to be like, I don't know what my son will see, like what spaces, because ultimately too, like a lot of these deeply black church spaces also, I have a lot of critique for, how authority was used in church and stuff like that. And so trying to figure out the balance of that. If I wanted my son to have a black church experience, I don't know what that's going to look like later on. So that kind of saddens me a bit. And some people think that the answer to that is a multi-ethnic, or should I say a multicultural church. And I want to be careful with my words because I don't want to sound like a pro-segregationist or whatever. But I see the theory of it, the hope of it in theory of like, oh yeah, we have this multicultural, I think the sort of snares that I've often seen is that it doesn't really end up being multicultural. It's multi-ethnic, but really there is a culture that rises to the top and the other ones sort of have to play second fiddle to that. I think a great example of that is a lot of like Maverick City, Elevation, kind of worship music where structurally, format-wise, it's CCM, it's contemporary Christian music, it's white evangelical music, and then if you have black people singing it, then it's all the flair and the style of black people. But like ultimately, like it's not gospel. The attempt of the multicultural really just turns into multi-ethnic, not really multicultural. And a dominant culture does arise, and it ultimately, like, on the surface, you can say it's a desire of unity, but really it boils down to, I think, like, it's capitalism. Like, and what I mean is that you have to serve what is going to serve the majority the most, and ultimately what that means is who's going to keep the lights on, who's going to buy the most music, who's going to buy the most books. You got to serve the majority culture. So this attempt to be multicultural really just brings in all the other minority ethnicities to serve the majority culture. And so it doesn't feel multicultural at all. And so, not to say that it should not be attempted. I think one of the churches that I remember, I think it was, I forget the name of this church in Houston off the top of my head now. They probably did it the best. That was the first time I've really seen. But even then, you can still argue that it was ultimately, like, the meat of it was like, oh, this is white reformed culture, and you just have a bunch of ethnicities represented. And so that's what ultimately turned me off about that. And what really made me realize that was I was in a multi-ethnic church, multicultural church, when Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown were killed. And when we tried to bring our ethnic or cultural concerns to our leadership, that's when we were presented with what is now the dominant idea within conservative evangelicalism, is that, like, social justice doesn't have any place in it, which is odd, by the way. Let me just say that the whole era of, like, trying to silence black people about social justice and black bodies, and they're like, oh, the gospel is not political, it's not political, it's not political. It's got to keep it about the gospel, got to keep it about the gospel. And then meanwhile, back at the ranch, it was political. It was always, it was like, so funny that, like, in that time, and which is kind of how I fell off with Vody too, is that to hear him, I just thought that he was going to really be a voice that kind of spoke some sense into that space. And I was like, wow, like, et tu, Brutus? Like, that's what it felt like. And it was just like, oh no, it's not political. And then, like, like, the whole time behind the scenes, it was political. So again, that's the scary thing about wanting to be multicultural, multi-ethnic, because you think you're serving a purpose of unity, but really all along you've been an asset to the thing that would ultimately want to be your demise in America. Yeah. So that's like, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, it seems that the culture of our country overpowers the culture of the church, as opposed to the other way around. And so the culture of our country is e pluribus unum, is that how you say it? Where, like, out of the many come one. It's the idea, and this is...
Who determines what that one is?
Right,
That's
right. It really is, European-centered, right? And so, yeah, the majority culture tends to win out. And now with talk of America not having a white majority by 2040 or whenever it's supposed to be, now we're seeing all the pushback, right? It's where we got to stop the immigration issue. And it's not just, and initially was, well, it was just illegal immigrants we don't want in our country. But now it's clear
that's
that
it's always like, oh no, there has to always be some sort of plausible deniability of like, oh no, it's not that we don't want immigrants, we just don't want. Yeah. But more and more you start to see like what's really desired.
Yeah, it's really the dominant culture holding on to control.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I don't want to talk too much in politics with you.
Yeah. But I'll say, the tricky part is that, like, again, with my kind of experience in the church, you say, I don't want to talk too much politics. Like, conservative Christianity is politics. Like, white evangelical, that term is a political designation. It's not a denomination. Yeah. It's a political thing. So it's, unfortunately, it's really kind of hard to separate the the two. You'd be a fool to separate the two these days.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm sad.
Man, I'm trying to think which direction to go, but let's just for the sake of time, because our time is limited.
Yeah.
It's been almost 3 years ago since you.
Yeah, August 2020. Oh, no, 4.
4
Wow,
years.
2021, August 2021.
I remember you calling me. And I was taking a walk with Heidi, and we were with somebody else. And before you announced it publicly, you called me to kind of let me know where you were at.
Yeah.
I think I flew to Atlanta
That's right, you did.
for a day just to be with you. And,
Yeah.
At least in my mind, it was to be with you, be with a friend,
Yeah.
and someone I care for. And then obviously you made the public announcement shortly after that.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into all the why you left and so forth. You've talked about that on your own platforms.
Yeah.
But I want to talk more so, now 3 years later,
4.
4 years later, is there anything from the Christian faith, Christian tradition that you're still holding on to? Is there anything you're still wrestling through? And I know that could be a loaded question, but however you want to respond to that. Are there aspects that you're still holding on to? Are there aspects that you're still kind of holding on to, but you're still wrestling through whether that's going to be long term?
Yeah. I try not to say this with any disclaimers or equivocations. If people want to draw their own conclusions, so be it. I talk at length about this on my channel, Flights and Feelings with Joseph Solomon on YouTube. If you want to, if you are interested in actually knowing what I mean about what I say. But I think that, there's still a lot. I mean, there's no letting go of it completely, because like you said, it's how I was raised. I am culturally a Black Christian. If you make Black church references, I'm going to get it. That's who I am, and so it still has, a tender spot in my heart. There's still a loose figure of Jesus that looms in the background. I think that what I've held on to is I still pray. I still read the Bible pretty regularly. I went a few months without reading it for a while, and I'm kind of back to reading it again. I like the structure of it. I like the moments. I realized that I think I underestimated how much sitting, as I talked about reflection earlier, it still is good to reflect and have intentional thinking. And I think being a student of the Bible made me an intentional thinker about who I am and what my place was in the world and what my place was in the grand narrative of life. And that was a practice. That was a daily prayer is doing that. It's a daily practice of pausing and being what matters most? What do I care most about? What should I care most about? And so that's a practice that I've still held on to. I think that I've talked about this on my channel as well, about being open to, and I don't mean this as a slight to Christians by any means. I know this word can sound offensive. I genuinely don't mean it in an offensive way. The myth of Jesus, and I mean myth in a broad sense of the narrative, the story. I think we are all inherently storytelling beings. We need a story. We don't need just facts about things. We need a beginning, middle, and end that makes those facts relatable to what we're experiencing in the moment. And I think that the story of Jesus is still a story, is still a myth that I'm open to accepting without all the dogma of it. I was reading this book by Dale Allison Jr. last year, who's another one of my sort of favorite Christians, very progressive Christian, Somebody I probably should have tried out before I completely jumped ship. I make this joke all the time of like, man, you probably should have tried heresy first before you dipped completely. I think one thing that conservative Christianity can give you, and that's just mainstream Christianity in general, is that this dichotomy that you have to either be all in, and that heresy is like actually almost worse than being an apostate, than completely shipwrecking your faith. And I was like, maybe you should just try a little heresy, man. Like maybe Jesus didn't get all the things right. Maybe maybe he wasn't completely right in all his prophecies about himself, and that's okay. Maybe we don't know everything. Maybe the historical Jesus is under a lot of rubble of theological opinions and just history in general, but that doesn't make him less worthy of studying and following and being a North Star. I started reading the books that all the conservative folks told me don't read, like the Gospel of Thomas, and you'd be surprised how similar the Gospel of Thomas actually is to the four quote unquote canonical Gospels, but the approach there, Jesus is much more of it's just a different figure. I won't get into the details of it, but it's still Jesus to me, or at least what people thought Jesus, who people thought Jesus was. And ultimately to me, that's what Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are, is what people thought, what a group of people thought Jesus to be. And I think that's fascinating. Even if they weren't, let me just say this, I'm not trying to evangelize your people to like, oh, wait, or whatever, but just, I still think that's like, even if it's not historically or factually true, isn't it just interesting that a large group of people believe this about this very specific individual, and they live their lives surrounding that? I think that's to me, that's still pretty intriguing. And so I still find those stories. I think where I'm at now is, we talked about being from one spectrum to the other. I think I sort of found myself in the middle, even if it doesn't land me at Christianity, but just in general, I've learned the limits of intellectualism. I truly believe that it does come down to the individual experience. Even Soren Kierkegaard, very staunch Christian believer, considered the father of existentialism, like he made this argument that, rationality and intellectualism doesn't get you to faith. I think that's one of the biggest flaws about Christian apologetics, is that me and Ruslan had a disagreement about this, and I think I kind of persuaded him, but I was like, the whole enterprise of apologetics is to say that 1 + 1 = infinity. Like if I just give you all the math of the logics, it's going to get you to infinite. There's a leap that has to be made. Yeah. You can't, 1 + 1 doesn't equal infinity unless you're talking about faith. You have to make the leap of faith to where you can honor the intellectual, you can honor logical, rational thought. I still believe in science and evolution and all those type of things. But I also know that those things, reasoning won't get me to doing. Just like the girl said, no matter what the shape of the earth is, it ain't gonna change that I gotta pay these bills. It ain't gonna change that I still have to be a father. And what story am I gonna use to be a father, to be a doer in the world? And I just don't think that rationale alone, logic alone gets you there. I think there is, for the human experience, there's always gonna be some sort of leap to the infinity. And it's scary to do that. It's scary to try to marry those things. I think for one side, on the logical side, it's scary to want to leave logic behind and jump into the infinity. And for those who are already in infinity, they're afraid that the logic is going to do something to dismantle what they believe in. And I just think it's a false dichotomy that you can't be deeply scientific, deeply logical, and also understand the limitations of that and still be someone who's full of faith. And where science speaks, let it speak. Don't let the Bible speak for science. And then where the theologians speak about faith and experience, and the philosophers, that's their domain. And we don't have to always try to figure out where the cross point is for the two. I think I'm okay with that. So.
Maybe you're a little related to that. I think of the wise men's story, the birth of Jesus. wise men from the east. They're studying the stars and whatnot, and they 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 know that something's going on because something's out of whack, right, with the movement of the stars. So they come looking for this anointed one to be born, but they don't know where he's to be found until someone shows them the scriptures that he'll be born in Bethlehem, right? I think a lot of times I just share that in the sense that a lot of times we think it's got to be one or the other. Where I think, in Christian terminology, we'll talk about, the how God expresses himself through the creation, and then he also expresses himself through the word. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. It's God does both, right? Mm-hmm. Science and word and so forth. So I like how you said, every knowledge is limited. Every knowledge, because we're created beings, there's no way I could fully understand. I know gravity, but do I fully understand it? I know how the human body works, but do I fully? Right? There's always going to be a limit to it, and so faith, whether someone as myself who is walking with God and following after his truth, or someone like you who's saying, well, I'm not exactly where I'm at. At the end of the day, we all need faith to move forward, faith to operate. And so, in your Flights and Feelings podcast I listened to the other day, you talked about sexuality, and how you believe there's virtue in abstaining for one person that you're kind of committed to in life, and how you, even in your season of abstinence, that there was good in that. So I want to just, as we land the plane of this conversation, your moral compass, your moral persuasion, your moral beliefs, where are you getting that from these days?
Why do you ask?
Why do I ask?
Yeah, I want to know before I answer, I want to know what would this be? What would be the purpose of that?
Yeah.
What would the answer do for you, should I say?
Yeah. So for a Christian, right, we would say it comes from the scriptures that God has given us in direction of life, right? And so for you, who still has morals that you're holding to, I'm curious. I'm not trying to catch you in some.
No, I think that's trying to catch me, but I also know it's not gonna. I have an answer, and I have a well thought out to myself answer. But I mean, I'm also like, I wonder what does this serve? Because I've been asked this before, and I think that Christians already have a sort of endpoint in mind, and they're not really concerned with knowing what I actually think, or even turning in and thinking, is he saying something, or am I okay with what I've been told?
No, so, I hope you know me well enough to know, like, I'm curious.
Yeah.
And how your mind is wrestling through this stuff.
Yeah.
Again, this is not an apologetic question to try to
okay.
trap you. Okay.
I'll say this. My basis for morality is the same as the Christian, which is the individual. It's like, no matter how you try to couch it, you are the starting point for your morality. Even you saying, well, the Bible is my starting point for morality. Why is it? Because you deemed it to be sufficient as an answer for morality? Oh, because it gives me an objective standpoint. Why is objective better than subjective? Who decides that? Like ultimately, it comes down to what you think is the most whatever, insert whatever adjective. This is the most XYZ thing or answer, so that's why I'm going with it. You were the ultimately the arbiter of that, and I don't think that's I don't even think that's even anti-Christian. Again, I think I keep quoting Kierkegaard because like I was like, man, why didn't I find this guy when I was a Christian? That it does come down to the individual. He talks about the morality of Abraham. Father Abraham had many sons, and he had to put Isaac down. And he talks about the leap from the moral plane to the infinite plane, the faith of the plane of faith, where like Abraham could not explain to other people. Morality, you can explain to other people why this is good or why this is bad. There's nothing about what happened in the story of Abraham that you could explain, that he could explain in the moment, not knowing that God was going to stop him from killing Isaac, that he could explain to someone else that like, trust me, I'm a good moral person. I'm not crazy. God told me to kill my son. And I bring that point up, and Christians are always like, well, ultimately God didn't kill him. But if you're Abraham in the moment, you don't know that. You just know that I know murder is wrong. I'm not supposed to kill my son, but this is a mediation between me and God, and not morality is for the social. It's for between me and my fellow man. This is not. And so you can say this, or you can just say just internally or whatever. Either way, it was an individual experience that Abraham had to make a choice that was good, but not socially moral. And I think that really gets at the heart of everything is very much predicated upon the individual. And I think that's okay. I think that's really scary to people. They're like, oh, I don't want to get into apologetics. I just feel like I know the next response is like, well, then that means if we didn't have objective truth, and I can go and do whatever, insert heinous crime. It's like, but people don't want to, like most people don't want to go commit a heinous crime. People who do and don't care about communal punishment or excommunication we call them psychopaths or sociopaths. I believe that morality predates religion, not the other way around. I think we got religion because morality in and of itself is okay for, even animals have morality. Bonobos, chimps might have morality. Morality in and of itself is not enough to communicate a narrative among hundreds or even thousands of people. If you're in a group of 5 of your friends, you rarely have to invoke the 10 Commandments to keep everyone like being kind to one another. It's when you start having very complex communities that you probably need to have an external party saying, hey, don't do this. So that's kind of my view on that. I say all that to say, I'm not saying that God can't be the one that gives morality. I'm just saying that it's not the only explanation. And at best, there could be a sort of partnership of morality between God and humans. And I think that morality has always been subjective, even for the Christian. As much as we want to claim that morality is objective from the Bible, it's extremely subjective how you get to parcel out what is objective from the Bible. But I say all that to say, I have my own experience as a human that I want to have a life of dignity, and I want to have a life of compassion, and I want to have a life that is, as much as possible, one of self-determination, where I'm allowed to make choices that are of my own, as much as I'm aware of. And I'd like to be on a pursuit of whatever purpose I think that is good. And of course, the checks and balances to that is that, of course, a lot of my desires could conflict with other people's desires. Well, that's the nature of being in society. There's got to be a give and take of like, okay, no, I don't like paying taxes, but I also don't want to build my own roads. So there has to be a give and take of living in a society with other people. And I think that's where politics and stuff come in, and learning, okay, if I want to be someone with a life of dignity, then that should influence how I see life of dignity for other people, and being an advocate for that. And as far as sexuality goes, it's ultimately, which I wish Christians would, like, I guess they do, as far as like not just being on a spectrum of shame and guilt where like do this because God says so, or don't do this because it's not right, but understanding why you want to do it in the first place is not always purely like sin, but like what is your understanding your relationship to sex in a very practical and psychological way. And sometimes you won't fully understand that simply being a virgin. Not to say that you should go out and have sex in order to learn yourself, but it's much more complex than just don't have sex until you're married or whatever. And so for me, it's turned more into like I only want to engage in a way that is fulfilling to me, not just with sex, but just in general. Like, does this action serve the moment, or does this action serve many moments, and how many more moments can it serve? And that's ultimately what the Christian's perspective is too. Y'all do things because you want to do the thing that serves the most amount of moments. Eternity, there's no more moments than infinite moments. And so you're trying to do the thing that you think ultimately serves the most amount of moments. And when you're cavalier with discipline, particularly sexual discipline, it serves much fewer moments. And so that's kind of how I think through it. But it's not a shame and guilt thing. It's like if I quote unquote mess up, there's not like I gotta go and repent. It's just, it is a reflection of like, what are the practical steps that you want to do to stay on the path that you really want to be on, concerning not just physical sex, but even pornography. Like, I think that even the church, I'll just say this, like, so much of the experience of young men in the church when it comes to pornography is on the spectrum of shame and guilt, and not really on a more practical, like, habit destroying and habit building type of perspective, because it's only about like, well, it's just sin and you shouldn't do it. And it's like, well, there is something physiological happening in my brain, and I want to understand it, and it is contradicting what I ultimately want for my life to serve the most amount of moments. Watching pornography doesn't serve many moments for me. And so the church oftentimes doesn't give like enough space. It's just, grace is this very ethereal thing, but it's not a very practical, like, okay, it's not so much about quitting cold turkey. It's about building a pattern over time where you may have watched it this much at one point. Now you only watch this many times, and then eventually we just get. That's oftentimes what the journey of sobriety is for even alcoholics. And so I don't think that pornography is seen that way from church leadership. So I'm getting a little off track, but you see what I'm saying about just trying to kind of give a practical perspective, of like what self-discipline and morality and all that, and what's valuable and purposeful to me is. So
I think you bring up some good points in the sense that a lot of times people in the church, Christians, right, it's just, well, the Bible says this, so
it's that simple.
This is that simple, right? Yeah. Obviously, God has I would say God has a greater plan, right? Why? When God says to avoid sexual morality, it's not, he's trying to keep us from fun. When he, says, love your enemy, it's not that he's trying to lead us down the wrong path, right? Mm-hmm. And so rather than just being, I think, people who just make everything, again, so black and white, it's why. Asking the question why. And that's what I've always appreciated about you. It's always digging deeper. Mm-hmm. What's below this? Even as you asked me the question, why did I ask you, right? Mm-hmm. That's just how you naturally are. And I think, that's something that's challenged me over the years, and I think you've been able to challenge other people. Obviously, where we land is different at this point. I'm
at this point.
At this point,
the Christians are always holding out hope, man.
I pray for you all the time.
Listen, man, I tell people all the time, if you get to heaven and you do not see me there, you have gone to hell. So don't be surprised.
But in all seriousness, I appreciate your desire, your crave to always dig deeper, to ask the question why. So even as you talk about pornography, right, we could easily just say, well, it's just not something I'm supposed to be doing. But again, when we dig deeper down, it's what it does to our brain, how we view people of the opposite sex. It has to do with the how these videos are being created, right? And the human trafficking and abuse of people. I mean, there's so much more than just not doing this.
Yeah.
It impacts so many areas of life, right? Again, loving our enemy, it's more than just what God says, love your enemy. It's, man, I mean, as we look around the world, all the wars and all the division, right? Yeah. It's because we're not doing what God says to do, which has ramifications and so forth. But again, I know there's people who are going to watch this and be like, Brian, you didn't come with a theological, pushback.
Yeah, you ain't hit him with the gospel uppercut.
and again, just that's not the point of this.
Yeah. And I hope I didn't come off as trying to persuade or whatever, because that's not my goal either. I think sometimes I want to show people that this is not something I've flippantly thought through, but at the same time, like, I'm not looking to try to.
Again, we've had private conversations before. We'll have private conversations moving forward, right? Yeah. But what I wanted to model here is, again, one is the journey that you've been on. That this decision wasn't made lightly for you, and again, I'm praying and I'm hopeful.
I know we got pressed for time. What do you think you could have done different? Do you ever think, like, man, if I'd have done this, Joe would still be a Christian?
No, I don't feel like the weight of that decision. And even, I think I might have asked you at the beginning of the podcast, is just, as I continue to walk with people, I realize, like, none of us do things perfectly, right? You're a father. You're going to screw up, right? Yeah. And so we need to be continuously learning best practices, and so I don't carry the weight of your decision. Yeah.
I didn't think you did. I was just curious.
But if you have any thoughts, right? I'd love to hear that again. But man, I've enjoyed walking with you. I've enjoyed the friendship that we have. I enjoy, again, how you challenge and push. I enjoy the questions, and even when you were walking with God, right? Like, you would always have these theological questions, deep thoughts, and again, like you said, I'm more of like, let's just get this done. Let's love on people. Let's walk with people, and I'm not saying that in the sense that that's the way to go, right? Mm-hmm. I think I need to be challenged to think about deeper thoughts. Yeah. And I think there's other people that I could challenge to, okay, you've been thinking about this for a long time. Yeah. What are we doing about it? What are we doing with it, right? Yeah. I think what God commands us is simpler than what we try to make it. It's like literally just love God better and love your neighbor better, right? But again, man, I love you. I just want to acknowledge that, honor you with that. Thank you for who you are, and I'm excited to see how you continue to grow as a father. You got a kid that's one, is it? Yeah. And man, that's a whole nother topic of how that is changing you, right? Because there's no way to bring a life in that resembles you and has your DNA, right? And just the love you have for your son. Yeah. So thank you
I thank you, man. And I'll say I thank you for everything that you've. I've told you this in person, but we'll do it on camera, man. Thank you for everything that you've done as a human being. You went from mentor to just like a friend, and thank you for flying. I forgot about that. You flew to Atlanta just to be with me, and man, providing that experience that I'm still processing through in Chicago, but I'm thankful for who you are, no matter what theological disagreements I may have. Like, the dope thing about you being a doer is that I've been able to witness someone who has put their life and their money where their mouth is and say, I want to care for the most vulnerable, and I want to see the world be a better place, and I don't want to just talk about it, and not wherever you land on the theological, political space. I think the world is a better place when we have people who are like you, who are willing to put their lives on the line to see gardens grow in gloomy spaces. So,
love you, man.
Love you too, bro.
Thanks for joining us for the Legacy Disciple podcast. Until next time.
Thank you for checking out today's episode of the Legacy Disciple podcast. If you're interested in learning more about our ministry, upcoming conferences, or partnering with us, head to our website at legacydisciple.org. We also encourage you to follow us online at Legacy Disciple on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Until next time, continue to be a disciple that makes disciples.